There are 5 connections between language and culture. One of the connections is language helps people share their culture and stay connected to it. How does language help keep Alutiiq culture alive?
Uluch yach lugu.
The colonial past is not pretty. We started with treating the people as subhuman. But we should not say, oh, that happened in the past. I'm like, actually, we're still practicing the same methods of extraction and exploitation of the native peoples as they did. We're just calling it a different thing. How do we change that? We change that by finding ways to collaborate with the communities so that they're the ones who are telling us in museums what we can share and what we shouldn't share with the public. And that changes that discussion of, I have your things, I'm going to do whatever I want, as opposed to, we are caring for your collections. How do you want us to continue caring for those? And then how do you get that knowledge of how those cultural pieces were created back to the community? And applying that in a way that allows us to lift up these cultures that have been suppressed, that have been systematically erased, to reversing that and respecting us as human beings.
Nama.
So Alphonse Pinard was a French scholar traveling around the world in the 1870s, collecting indigenous people's words and languages. But what was the bias on how this was being written? Like, for example, there's a text that's talking about our religious belief system. Something terrible or hideous or a monster. The Russian texts equate all those traditional beliefs as being devils and evil and bad to make us look worse in order to subjugate us. So when you read the text, you're like, oh my God, these guys are nothing but satanic worshipers. But if you change the words from devil to helper spirits, it changes the entire meaning of that entire paragraph that talks about our worldviews and beliefs.
Aki duchnuni.
Everything is tied around how we gather food. At contact, based on the archaeological data, there was between 20 to 30,000 people on the island. Between 1784 and 1818, our population dropped down to 1,500. It wasn't disease that killed us off, it was starvation. If you were a whaler, for example, you went out and got a whale. The Russians took the whale, then you had to work to get the food back. And so if you didn't get a whale, your family starved.
Chanalugu.
Like the kayak stuff that I got into, it kind of brought me closer to where I belong. Kayak building was like the rite of passage for a young man because he was going to have to support his family. And he'd tell stories about going out and places they've been and what they did, how they hunted in them. They weren't just kayaks, these were a way of life.
We've been told we're dumb natives for the last century. I grew up with that, where I was told that all the time. But to make a boat from wood you collect off the beach, and then the engineering involved in that, and making sure that you design it and build it so you're not putting your life in danger in really rough weather, and being able to go out and go hunting in that, that's pretty amazing.
How does language help keep Alutiiq culture alive? Want to learn more about this topic? Click the link in the description to experience our iNative activity sheet.